Well, welcome back to the Betoota Advocate radio show, recording live here in the beautiful Diamantina. Bit of rain out there. It doesn't really look like a desert at the moment. It looks like we're in the Tuscan plains of Browns Plains, actually, which is, I believe, home to today's guest. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overall, and of course Errol Park. How are you, Errol?
Good, mate. That was spoken by a man who's never seen Tuscany in Italy, I dare say. I've been to Browns Plains and I've been to Tuscany in Italy, and they are quite different.
Well, I don't know if they have the rugby league talent that Browns Plains does coming out of Tuscany.
No, but they do have the gun crime.
Now, today's guest is Anthony, the King of Western Grit Hayes. It's a tag that he has not been able to avoid since early on in his career. Thank you for joining us, Hazy.
It's good to be here. I've already had a good chuckle while you've been doing the intro, so that's good.
I hope I got that right. You are a Browns Plains boy?
I am a Browns Plains boy, yeah. Born in Brizzy, the Mater Hospital. Grew up in Browns Plains, went to Browns Plains Primary, Browns Plains High, and my parents still live in that vicinity. So, living in Melbourne now, but you can take the boy out of Browns Plains, as the saying goes.
Absolutely. Die hard Maroon of the bone. We've seen the photographs.
Yep.
And we're going to get into this film that you've been involved in, or you've starred in, directed, co-written, and produced, In the Shape of Gold, which is released on January 26th. So in a couple of days' time from now, right across Australia on the streaming services, that is. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. But I want to talk to you about the long road towards gold, towards this film. Tell us, can we start with how you got out of Browns Plains? Not to make that sound like it's a hard place to get out of, but what was the pathway?
Yeah, sure.
Because I don't know if they were handing out flyers to NIDA down there at Browns Plains High.
Well, when I realised I wasn't going to play for Queensland in the state of origin, I realised that I'd have to come up with another plan. So I always wanted to be a rugby league player, and my dad actually started the Browns Plains Bears. He built the Browns Plains Bears clubhouse because he was a bricklayer, and that was going to be my ticket out of Browns Plains. It was going to be halfback or 5'8" for the Maroons. I realised very quickly that wasn't going to happen. And I started kind of acting on the weekends, probably just so my parents could get me out of their hair on, Saturday and Sunday, and started commercials and basically flogged every product under the sun as a 9-10-year-old kid, from veggie hot dogs to, Narada tea to, they basically, my parents put me to work. And
bit of a Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, a bit of a Macaulay Culkin. And, but the good thing was I could go and buy whatever NRL collector cards I wanted.
Yeah.
Because I was, had enough money for it. Yeah. And, then you just kind of, went from there doing kid shows, and then Paradise Beach for a while for the duration of that show. And then, it was kind of everyone was going into university, and I'd spent 3 or 4 years of my high schooling on and off film sets, and, realised I didn't have the grades to get into university, so I better just keep rolling with acting, and then moved to Sydney to give it a go. So I didn't really expect to ever have a career out of it. It just organically kind of happened,
So can you just tell us, did you study the thespian stuff, or was it always on screen from a young age?
No, as Russell would put it, the school of hard knocks.
Yep.
was my school. So yeah, I didn't. I mean, by the time I was old enough to go to NIDA, and 18 years old or 17 is when people usually go in. I'd been doing it for quite a while, even by then, So I did think about it, but I was working a lot, so I didn't. And so I'd never had the kind of traditional or classical theatre training, and always felt quite dumb, really, up against all these kind of well-read, actors that came out of drama schools. But my path was always, I guess, to play knockabout Aussie, racists, rapists, murderers, and what have you. And
we've covered this in the Betoota Advocate, actually. Yeah.
You have covered this, quite well. And so, you don't need to read a book to be able to play those roles, do you?
No.
So it's fine.
It helps, actually, doesn't it, to play a racist redneck murderer if you haven't read a book.
Oh well, there are certain books that you can read. You know, I think there are a few on the racist curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's plenty going around now. Actually, you should visit Craig Kelly's website now for some interesting resources in that regard. But as you pointed out here, Anthony, you were working. Like, you couldn't fuck around for 4 years, doing the amateur theatre stuff and learning, those specific disciplines because you were already on the job.
Pretty much, yeah.
When did you start seeing it look like work was coming in? I mean, I know you said that was happening from a young age with the commercials, but was there any moment where you're like, okay, now I'm an Australian actor?
Yeah, it's always, for me, it's always felt uncertain, to be completely honest. I mean, I'm a character actor. That's kind of what I do. I could do 4 films in a year, and there was a time there where, it seemed like I was in every bloody Australian movie that was out, and a lot of work was coming out, but it really only equated to 15 days a year of work. Yeah. So it was always a bit of a hard slog to get through it and try and pick things that you actually liked doing and not fall into the trap of doing long-term TV, which I wasn't into, at the time. Yeah. So it's always a battle, and that's, that is why, I started writing and creating my own materials out of necessity. You got to you can't wait by the phone for the next 3 days racist role.
Yeah.
That's not going to do you any good.
Well, I know, we laugh about it, but some of these roles you've played, they're quite haunting. I mean, one that obviously comes to mind is The Boys. The Boys, that's a type of movie you never forget. And another one that I actually found your character actually just so real and just someone you'd seen before was in The Slap. Can I ask you a question? When you were playing that role and when you went and looked back at it, how did you view your character in The Slap? Obviously, the father of the boy that gets slapped. I don't need to go into the plot because everyone's either read the book or seen the show. What was your feeling on that? Because we were talking to old Throwing the Cow the other day, and he was under the impression that your character was like a marginalised, the guy that you feel sympathy for. I wasn't sure if I felt the same way watching that.
Yeah, I don't know that I had much sympathy for him. I mean,
the drunken, obnoxious labourer.
Obnoxious kind of bogan bloke, I mean, I identified with him, sure. But, I mean, it's always interesting doing those kind of things, though, because, you mentioned The Boys and The Slap and all these type of characters. Is you always have to come at them with a sense of non-judgment and a sense of purity, in a sense where there's a grey to everyone. The blackest soul in the world still has some kind of redeeming feature, I'm sure, somewhere there, and that's your job to find that, to make it interesting. So, but I always like kind of wading into the shallows of the darker side of humanity. It's where I kind of sit best, and trying to find the shades and the colour in there. You know. And make an irredeemable character somewhat sympathetic in some way, so that it's a complex portrayal of a human being. Yeah, that's what I love about it.
It was interesting that you could see the layers to that character, and I guess Brendan Cowell could see so much of himself in there that he felt sorry for him. We've had Cowell on here before, and he's a hoot, but it sounds like it's hard work out there. It's hard work out there for you guys. I mean, especially when you have to leave somewhere like Browns Plains and end up in a city that's much more expensive to live in, and it's basically, unless you're a real estate agent or some sort of trust fund kid, I guess it's a hard slog for anyone in a city like that, let alone a bloke working 15 days a year.
Yeah, that's right. It's it really tests your mettle. You definitely kind of, I guess it's that thing is you just got to back your talent. You just got to go, I'm good at this. I know that. And if you keep cracking down doors, then eventually they're going to open. And the thing about the industry I've found is that, just when you're ready to give up, something amazing happens, that changes your mind. Like, you just about had enough, and then David Michaud gives you a call and goes, you're going to do a Brad Pitt movie around 7 countries around the world for 4 months. And you go, all right, I'm back in. So it has that tantalizing kind of, and that's why we love it and hate it, is that it offers up the most extraordinary experiences and the most intense experiences, and then it's a piece of shit the rest of the time. So
just halfway through getting verified by Uber, and then you get a phone call like that.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it feels like. Yeah.
You've worked with some big name stars like Richard Roxburgh, for one. Luke Bracey, friend of the show, comes to mind. So, some of the biggest names in the history of motion pictures. Is that kind of what prepared you for spending a couple months in the desert with Zac Efron without getting starstruck? I mean, you've stood opposite Luke Bracey on the screen.
Bracey's it, really, isn't he? He's the pinnacle. So it's, I love Brace. He loves his rugby league too, which is he's a blue, which is
and a disgusting Manly Sea Eagles fan.
And he's one of those toothless standing on the hill type guys. Yeah. Okay, he's one of those like Justin Rosniak.
Yeah, toothless silvertails. It's a rare breed.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah. Rip his head off. Come on, ref. Yeah, he's one of those. Yeah, we know those guys well. Well, bizarrely, I've never ever felt intimidated by actors before, but I've always felt intimidated by rugby league players. Yep. That's weird because even I'm now a 43-year-old man, and NRL players are 19 and 20. I mean, now you know what I mean. I'd see Payne Haas and I'd be like scared and shit.
Yeah, but like,
dude, he's a 19-year-old kid. What are you talking about?
I know, but actors though are quite little. They are really, they are, like aside from jockeys, they are quite little. So it's understandable that you'd be a bit apprehensive around a rugby league player, considering that they are kind of built like a door on legs.
Yeah.
And I can vouch for that because once I was at a urinal in between Sylvester Stallone and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I was bigger than him. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Nonplussed.
At a Planet Hollywood opening. So I was like, they're small. It's
those angles from the side of the boxing ring coming up through the ropes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's the low angle of the camera, just making him look big and, standing on boxes.
So how was it out there in the desert? I mean, how long were you out there for? I mean, this is Gold we're talking about now, the film we mentioned at the start of the interview. But how was it out there with someone like Zac Efron, who has effectively lived out of briefcases and huge Hollywood productions since he was a boy,
and also living in huge big mansions on the hills of Hollywood.
That's right.
Yes,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that was the thing is that, this could have been a disaster. Mm-hmm. If I had a Hollywood actor that came into this who was precious, then I wouldn't have got the film done. Yeah. And I mean, these conditions were so full on. They were they were the worst conditions I've ever been in for making a film. And I've done 4 or 5 films out in the Flinders Ranges before, but the ground temperature was 70 degrees Celsius on some days. It got so hot it was melting the shoes of the crew, and people were fainting.
So you were saying that all through this, that Zac wasn't being very precious at all. He was just lapping.
I'm saying that guy didn't go on his trailer once. I mean, we couldn't even have the trailers close by, which was, because we were shooting 360 degree on this clay pan, and so they were kind of a couple of kilometres away, tucked away under a hill. But he never complained once. He broke his hand in the middle of it and didn't even tell us. And I only knew once he sent me a photo of his X-ray with pins put in it.
Jesus.
He got a couple of pins put in his hand, but he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want production to stop. So, I mean, that guy was just so dedicated to it. And it was tough, man. Like, he was rolling around on that dirt for it was only 18 days, but it felt like about 6 months. There were sandstorms that blew us out for 3 days straight, so we couldn't shoot. And there was actually a sandstorm written into the movie, and we had paid heaps of money to get all these special effects guys up there with these big fans, and the idea was to drive these utes across this plane with these fans going to try and blow this movie dust around, and we're sitting here for 2 days on our asses not being able to shoot because of sandstorms.
Because of the real thing.
That's right there. We've got to do this. Insurance, and we can't, and you can't ask Zac Efron to shoot in a sandstorm. I was like, so I kind of snuck around the side of his van because we're shut down for the day, and just knocked on his van. He goes, "Dude, there's a sandstorm we want to shoot." And he goes, "Fuck yeah, buddy." So I was like, let's go and shoot. So then we kind of, had 3 hours in a real sandstorm to shoot it, and just threw the camera on the shoulder. And it was actually probably the most exhilarating 3 or 4 hours of shooting I've ever had, because it was nuts. And what you see in the movie is 90% real, apart from some CGI effects that are in there. So yeah, he was awesome, man. And like I said, with a precious Hollywood actor that's used to a level of comfort that he would be used to, it could have gone terribly wrong with the wrong actor, but he was right on board.
We know that there's some in the Australian media who've made a few faux pas recently, namely the Channel 7 entertainment reporter that flew all the way to England to interview Adele without having listened to her album on the plane.
And told her.
Yeah. Okay, interview's over then.
Yeah, well, that's what we're hoping. I mean, it's not out until January 26th, this Wednesday, so we actually haven't seen it. So for those listening, I'll give them a brief premise. It's a story of two men, played by yourself and Zac Efron, traveling through a remote desert and stumbling across treasure, or buried treasure, gold, basically, natural. And then kind of what happens to each man's kind of soul and, themselves as persons, them as people, when they start talking about this fortune, they start thinking about it. And of course, you're in there in the elements. And, there's that at all costs kind of psyche that you slip into. Would you say that when you were reading this and writing it, co-writer, of course, you didn't actually imagine the set to be as harsh as it was? And do you reckon that actually shines through? I mean, apart from the sandstorm, of course, does that shine through in the film?
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. I think it was really tough. I think what it does too is it zapped Zac of a lot of energy. It probably helped with having a very minimal performance, which is what we were going for anyway. But it was a real struggle, and I think you can see it in him through this film. I mean, it's 90% him in this movie by himself. Yeah. Without Wilson there next to him to keep him company. Either, so there's no Wilson.
Just the sun.
Yeah, that's right. Just the sun and some blisters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really intense situation, and perfectly summed up too. It's basically a tale about where humanity could be headed. The characters in the film don't have a name. Mm-hmm. They're nameless. They don't have a backstory, which is unusual for a film.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's set. It's not set anywhere.
Yeah.
And the idea was to explore a world in the future where, humanity has come to a point where we don't give a fuck about each other or where we're from or who we are.
Yeah.
And we just value things.
Yeah.
And then what happens to people, and then wrap it up into a nice, heavy-hitting genre vibe. And you could talk about big themes and still make people want to watch it, in a sense.
How were you able to convince him to sign on to this project? I mean, it seems quite left field from him. I mean, like how easy was it to convince one of the biggest stars in the world to come out to the Flinders Ranges in the middle of summer?
Yeah, it was actually a weird thing. There was a film that I was directing and producing with the Schwartz brothers over in Canada that Joel Edgerton was attached to. And that was a couple of years before we shot Gold, probably 2018 or something. And we got about 6 weeks into pre-production and we were about to shoot, and then the whole production fell over and went down. And Joel, it was like a house of cards. It was like once one actor pulled out, then other actors pulled out, and the whole thing was predicated on having to have this ensemble and all. In the movie finance world, it's like every actor has a particular value in different territories to make something happen. And so it becomes very difficult with an ensemble. And so that was just devastating, getting all that way and doing that. And then the only person who kind of stuck around was Joel, who's still attached to it, good mate. And when I got back, I was devastated. And so I spoke to Polly and just said, look, we've got to come up with a movie where it doesn't rely on a massive ensemble of actors who all have to be available at the same time,
Yeah, right.
So we need to engineer something for a single actor. But we were still trying to get that film back up. And so Joel kind of put in a good word for me with Zac's agent over in America and said, look, this guy's really cool. I've known him for years, and, he's got this film called Stingray that I'm attached to, and maybe, he wants to talk about Zac being in it. So Zac read that to be in that movie to kind of get that back up again. And I had a few meetings with him, and he almost did that, and then was like, I don't know, but I really want to work with that guy. And that was the report back. And then I just happened to have Gold ready, which was unheard of, really, and just said, "Oh, well, if he wants to work with me, how about this one?" And so we just kind of quickly farmed that one out to him, and he was like, "Yeah, this is the one. This is awesome." So
that's almost like, but that's perfect in this in the thinking. You'd had that experience with Stingray over in Canada, and you by your own kind of the way where you were at in making films, you were thinking it would be better with smaller cast, smaller capacity, which is by the grace of God the perfect production for this pandemic that ended up happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. Was that all? Yeah. So it feels like too good to be true, but this was something that was in the works before the people started coughing up in the wet markets.
Yeah, that's right. It's weird because it feels like a film that's completely designed for a pandemic style thing. And there are a few that got made after that. I think that Phil Noyce did with one with Naomi Watts that's coming out now, and there's a few that there was another one with Jake Gyllenhaal that he was a caller in a call center that I saw recently on. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of them that were basically, what can we make,
without putting people around each other.
Insurance pool. Yeah, but this was actually engineered, just because of a balancing of cast values thing, and just going, I don't want to go through that process again and having to have 6 actors all be available at the one time to facilitate the budget you need. So, but yeah, weird how things happen. It's the end of the world when Stingray falls over, and that's actually the thing that leads to getting Zac Efron in your next movie. It's crazy. It's like my dad always says things happen for a reason, and then you never seem like it at the time. I'm like, righto, Dad, shut up. What do you know?
Stingray will define me, Dad. You don't know anything about movies.
That's right. That's right. Oh, there he is. Come knock a ladder, go, all right, Dad, you're right about that.
I don't want to say I told you so, son, but this is going to be the biggest I told you so you've ever heard.
That's right. That's right.
Well, mate, we're looking forward to seeing it. It felt like it dropped. Perfect timing as well, like with the tennis and everything on. So it feels like I was watching Curios, and then I saw a trailer for Gold, and I walked outside and I saw a bus coming past with your mug on it. So it's all happening.
Done a great job of that's right. Yeah. So it's in limited theatrical release now until the 26th, and then it premieres on Stan on the 26th, and they've been fantastic getting behind this, and it's everywhere. Bus stops, everything. I've never seen this kind of level of promotion for a film before, which is quite amazing.
No, mate. I think it might have a little bit to do with Channel 9, the old merchants of advertising, taking Stan under their wing. So I guess that Channel 9 knows a thing or two about promoting things.
I think they do, yes.
Now that they've got Fairfax out of the room, I think they've been able to turbocharge and streamline their operation when it comes to putting things on bus stops, buses, billboards. And
in the phone?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, mate, before we let you go, we need to ask about the nickname, the King of Western Grit. Where did it come from? Who gave it to you?
That was a Joel Edgerton thing. He called me the King of Western Grit. And I can't even remember what it was, but it was after my 10th, role with a mullet, I think. And it just stuck. And then all of a sudden there was this Facebook page that came up with basically people taking my mulleted scone and just putting on all these random movie posters. But yeah, that was how it started, and it's stuck to this day.
Well, thanks for joining us, King of Western Grit. And lastly, what are your predictions for the 2022 NRL season?
Well, look, Adam Reynolds has gone up there, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. And Kurt Capewell has gone up there. And look, I just want Broncos to make the top 8 again because that it's heartbreaking to have such a successful club really floundering down there and have the talent behind them, but just no one steering the ship. But look, you can't really go past Penrith at the moment or the Storm. They're always there, aren't they? Manly's always a dark horse.
A couple of sleepers there.
A couple of sleepers there. With the Tigers will suck. It's, that's the Warriors could sneak in. You
could bet on the Tigers sucking ass. That's one thing we can do.
You can pretty much bet on that. Yeah, I mean, even the Bulldogs this year look like they might have some players. You know, so who knows?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. And also, I would say one thing to kind of boost your morale is it looks like the Broncos are doing a much better job of signing players than the 2023 NRL Dolphins. They're limping.
bit of a slow rollout, isn't it?
They're limping into a debut season.
Yeah, but they do have Wayne, though.
Kind of nothing.
They do have Wayne.
Yeah.
They've got Wayne.
Yeah.
They signed another 30-something today. We'll see how we go.
The median age of
did they?
Yeah.
front row's like 33.
Oh, like Tony Butterfield or something.
Yeah. Fins up. Fins up.
Kinescu's putting the boots back on.
Sam, take it easy. He's going to Redcliffe.
That's right.
I think that Hopper's only got 2 or 3 more years kind of left on his 10-year ban, so he'll be up there soon.
Yeah, the future's bright for the Dolphins.
Yeah. Fins up for 2023.
Belcher, get those boots back on, son. Fantastic. Well, great to chat, guys.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for joining us, and good
always.
luck with the rest of the junket. I'm sure they're going to be hounding you. It'll roll out here, and then it'll roll out elsewhere. It'll be in Iceland next week. A couple months ahead of you.
Roll out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But this will always be the most fun I ever had. So thanks.
Thanks, mate.
No worries,
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no worries. Bye.
Yeah.